Welcome to Voodoo Whiskey Gaming, and this is my late review of The Evil Within 2. I played it on the Xbox One. It's also available on the PS4 and PC. So I'm just going to start by saying I hated the first Evil Within. So I went into this game very, very skeptical. And if you're curious about why I hated the Evil Within, I'll put a link in the description below to my previous review. So the story goes, you play once again as Sebastian Castellanos, and well, you're no longer a detective, you are a burnout. Mobius then brings you in because, well, they kidnapped your daughter and put her in a STEM, and she was meant to be the core brain. If you don't know, a STEM is basically the Matrix. It's this game world's version of the Matrix. And well, their initial team failed to find her, so they bring in Sebastian because, well, he's highly motivated. You know, on account of thinking his daughter was dead and she's really not dead. So it's kind of a big deal for him. That having been said, he does not trust Mobius, and, well, with good reason. Once he goes into the STEM, he immediately finds some seriously messed up shit going on. I don't generally like to make these comparisons, but I have to in this case because there's a pretty early on moment where you're on a street and you just look and there's houses, ton of fog, some trees, and I immediately was like, oh, this reminds me of Silent Hill. Which that's not necessarily a bad thing, since that's what I really hoped from the first Evil Within. But that having been said, you find out that there's a crazy dude who has powers in the STEM, not unlike the first game, but he is not the core this time. And, well, he deems himself an artist, specifically a photographer, and he does some pretty cool stuff with it, where, like, he'll take a picture and it'll, like, freeze a person while they're dying. It's messed up and kind of crazy. And I'll say this about the game, I really enjoy it. The story is actually fantastic and it draws you in right away and keeps you going, which that was a huge problem I had with the first game. Next up, the audio. It's a horror game, so unlike a lot of other games, the audio is a character unto itself. There are some moments early on where the voice actor for Sebastian delivers some discount quality lines, but overall he does a good job. So do all the other voice actors in reality. I think they all do very well in this game. Like I said though, the sound is a character unto itself, and that is specifically the sound effects in this game. Sound effects help build that tension inside of you when something scary is about to happen. That goes the same for this game. The sound effects are excellent, and they're actually incredibly important in a game like this. I'm going to dive into the gameplay now, and it will tie into what I just said for the audio. Sound is incredibly important to the gameplay as well, because this game doubles as a stealth slash action slash survival horror game. And audio is always important in stealth games because you need to be able to hear your enemies. And you can hear them very clearly and determine where they are very easily. Since I brought it up and already started with it, the stealth in this game, it is pretty good. The stealth works very well. They do give you good cues for the most part of whether or not you're being spotted or heard or anything along those lines. My only complaint with the stealth, however, is the corner kill ability. It is spotty. Whether it'll work or not is incredibly debatable. Now, as for the survival horror elements, they're definitely in there in that supplies are to an extent limited. I never ran into a point where I was really desperate on health items, but there were times where I was getting desperate on ammo. But then you combine the fact that this game does do a good job of being spooky, so that works. And as for the shooting in the game, when things get shooty, it works very well. I never really had any major complaints with the shooting. I feel like the mechanics all work very well. They provide you with plenty of guns. Handguns, they provide you 4 different handguns. Or maybe 3. I think I got a 4th one because pre-order and all that, but whatever. You've got your main handgun, which is your good old workhorse. You can get a suppressed one down the line, which is good for sneaky draw away an enemy, and then you have one with a laser sight, which is good for that like long distance when all you've got left is pistol ammo. I will say the most useless weapon I ran into was the sniper rifle. A lot of the enemies, by the time you know they're there, they're way too close for a weapon like that. You can also level up your character as well as level up your guns, and that is necessary. Oh man. Especially when ammo is desperate, the fact that your handgun does double the damage, super important. The fact that you've invested skill points into steadying your aim, also super important. So I like that element, and they also have a mini game at least on top of all the other stuff that goes on in this game. And I'm not gonna lie, I probably should have progressed further into this game than I did, but I seriously wasted like a day of gameplay in the shooting range. On to other elements, I really love that this has a more open world feel. It's not full open world, but the areas are much more open, and that's one thing that really benefits the stealth. It gives you the ability to run away and hide and then come back and try and stealth take down enemies, which is important to conserve ammo. But not only that, there's your main mission and there are side missions and all sorts of other little things to do, and I like that. It really filled out the game. One gameplay element I could have completely lived without was there was a section where you had to go in first person. And since this is not a game that was developed to be 100% first person, it was not a wonderful moment. For the most part, the controls work very, very well. I say for the most part because there were times when I was trying to melee enemies and it just wouldn't register that that's what I was doing. Everything else I would do would register except for that. I would have to press the right trigger a few times to swing my knife to actually do some melee damage. And that was super inconsistent because there were other times where I did nothing but kill with like melee, like straight up face-to-face melee killing. But then there were times where I was trying to do that to conserve ammo and he just wouldn't swing. As for the graphics, I think the graphics in this game are really good. I really enjoyed not just the graphics, there was plenty of detail in those, but I enjoyed the art style and basically the design overall. It's important in a horror game, especially since the first Evil Within really kind of sold itself on that, except for Safe Face, because we'll just pretend that Safe Face didn't exist, because he was just a knockoff of Pyramid Head, let's face it. That having been said, he's not in this, and that's fine by me because the mini-bosses in this game are really creepy looking. The Obscura, whatever the chick with the giant saw thing is, the ghostly chick, they're spooky looking things, man. It's not just them, it's the way they've designed the levels, it's the way they've shaded the levels, etc. that add a certain level of creep factor to this game. There's a point early on where you walk into like a hotel or an apartment and you start going up the staircase and there's bodies just hanging for no reason as far as you can tell. You find some creepy stuff like that, and throughout the game you find other creepy stuff, creepy imagery. And that's key in a survival horror game if it wants to actually maximize the horror element. To wrap this up, this is the way sequels should be. They should take what was good from the first game, which was for me mostly just audio and visual, but then improve upon all the negatives from the first game, which Evil Within 2 absolutely does. If you're looking for survival horror, even if you're not, so long as you're not gonna piss yourself while you're playing something that could spook you, I fully recommend this. Okay, so in the comments below, why don't you tell me what your least favorite horror game is? And as always, thanks for watching. If you enjoy the video, please hit that like button. And if you like what I'm doing in general, share, subscribe. Have a good one. The shooting in this game works well. Words.